Albinger, ABC News. Good morning. Daria,
Good
please
morning.
explain all this to us because everybody says the sky is falling on all sides of this story.
Basically, that is exactly what they're saying, and they were saying that some changes needed to be made. And as we're heading to the midterm elections, we saw a rare show of bipartisanship on Capitol Hill yesterday when the House, as you said, voted 258 to 159 to approve a regulatory rollback that passed the Senate earlier this year. And I believe you and I talked about it when that happened, which hands the president a significant victory and starts to make good on that campaign promise where he said he was going to do a big number on Dodd-Frank. Now, Dodd-Frank is the legislation that was passed to put regulations on the banks during the financial recession and in the immediate aftermath of the financial recession, so we couldn't see any more bank failures, at least of the magnitude that we saw during the recession, because if you remember, President Obama said these banks were too big to fail. He said that it would have done just a number on the economy that we could never recover from. So what we have that happened yesterday was a lifting of the regulations for thousands of smaller and medium-sized banks, the community banks, if you will. It doesn't affect the 10 biggest banks. They're still under Dodd-Frank.
Banks are making record profits right now. So
Yes.
The argument that these regulations were hurting the banks, it doesn't seem to necessarily add up.
And that's what a lot of Democrats who voted against this say. They said that this is working, and it's working for everybody, they said. It's keeping the banks, it's holding them to a higher standard. A lot of people who were opposed to this were saying, but yet the banks were still able to do their business. They were still able to make a lot of money. So why mess with what's working? Well, a lot of Republicans say that regulations are hurting the economy, and we're eventually going to see this economic momentum slow to a halt if they don't do something about it. So that's the argument that these two groups are miles apart on.
Do I understand this right, Daria Albinger, that they're allowing the community banks, the smaller banks, less capital? Is that the idea? That they need?
Yes, that is the idea. That is the idea. Less money, and less money to mess up with.
Yeah.
If you will.
Yeah. We do know that there are a lot of community banks, right? Community banks over the last 10 years have really gone away. They've closed down. They've been bought out, right? Those small rural banks, that's oftentimes the lifeblood of the town. And if they can't survive,
Right.
the town doesn't survive.
And that is part of the rationale for lifting Dodd-Frank, is to make it easier for these smaller and medium-sized banks to do business. Because, like you just said, they are the lifeblood of some of these smaller communities. They are the smaller community. That's where people go for their mortgages. That's where people go for different types of loans. Say you want to start a small business. You're much more likely, if you're a small business lender, to get a favorable response from a smaller bank than you would be a larger bank if you don't have, the kind of capital that you need to get things going. You got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's the rationale behind lifting the regulations on these banks, is to get more people into business, keep the economy rolling forward, and hopefully, get it moving even more strongly forward.
Daria Albinger, ABC News correspondent. Daria, have a good day. Thanks.